Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be working in my sketchbook, and even though it feels like a long time that I haven't worked in my sketchbook, it hasn't been. We're gonna keep kind of like today's session more on the simple side, but we are going to be using alcohol markers. So I have already done a sketch so we can save some time, because if you guys can't tell, probably by the length of today's video, it's probably another long sketchbooking video. So feel free to grab supplies and draw along, or put this in the background while you're drawing. So sketch wise, this is my OC Selwyn. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but I ended up doing my sketch with the red, is it the Dia Nano Color lead, as I usually use. So this is my High-Tech C Coletto 5 multi-pencil, multi-pen, and then I have the mechanical pencil option, or part components, whatever you want to call it, and then we have our red lead. Because we're doing alcohol markers, I do find if you use like colored leads, sometimes of this nature, more of like this type, I feel like colored pencils, it probably bleeds a little bit less, but I find these ones bleed quite a bit more. So if you don't mind having whatever color you're using bleed into your alcohol markers, then feel free to use whatever. But because I like keeping the skin a little bit more avoidant of too much blue initially, we're going to be using red for the sketch. I just feel like red is a little bit less like intrusive of a color if you're coloring something that has more of like a warmer skin tone. But other than having my sketch already finished, on the back side of this side in particular, because this is notebook paper, it's like super thin, it gets quite a bit of bleed through. I'll put like an example on the side, because last week I did do kind of like an example of drawing Dan Heng with alcohol markers, and he had a significant amount of bleed through, almost like a 1-to-1, because like I said, this paper is very thin. But I like using sticker paper, matte sticker paper, in my sketchbooks to kind of like hide the bleed through, because like I said, the bleed through is almost like a 1-to-1. It's very hard to cover up unless you're actually pasting something on top, or maybe you want to use paint markers or something to cover the bleed through. But I like using sticker paper. So this is a matte sticker paper. I just cut it up in half, or about half, to fit inside my sketchbook. So you could, there's like a little seam in the middle. So paste it on one side, paste it on the other side. And not only is it good at like covering up the bleed through from this side, you basically can't see any of the ghosting anymore, like the bleed through at all, but it provides almost like a barrier for the other side. So because of that adhesive plasticky coating, I don't really have to worry about bleed through from this side going onto this page either. So we're kind of lucky that way. This side I will probably just like stick a plastic sheet. I know I have somewhere. So different like marker sets kind of come with this type of plastic material. I might grab some rubbing alcohol eventually and clean it up so it's a little bit less like having this debris, because sometimes the alcohol marker like bleed through or marks can be picked up again, so it's nice to keep this clean if you can. I just like using rubbing alcohol to clean up everything. You can probably use the colorless blender maybe to rub some of this out, but we can use this to basically protect our subsequent pages. You can also just use like thicker paper, several amounts of paper, whichever you want to use to kind of block this out if you can. I don't even know if these exist. I wanted to use like more like orange Himalayan poppies. I usually draw the blue ones, but I wanted to add orange ones because I feel like they complement Selwyn's overall color palette pretty well. So unfortunately, my sketch is a little bit messy in some areas, and we're gonna have to do some line work, which might be a problem. So one is the water-based markers I like to use. So these ones have a brush tip and a fine liner side. So for me, I like using the fine liner side because they have like a lot of different colors that we can pick from. I keep all those swatches in the sketchbook. So we're gonna quickly take a look. I should really tear some of these pages out. A lot of this actually has like my Japan trip from a few years ago. Actually quite a few years ago in here, but it has like personal information. I should really rip them out so I can primarily just use this as like a swatching color chart sketchbook. But I like choosing typically, Something on the warmer-ish side that complements typically the skin tone. So I'm usually looking in oranges, we can look into pinks, we can look into reds, and then as we darken up the lines, I will look at some of like our darker brands. We can use these ones, which I use often, but let's choose, because I feel like this is a little too dark. Orange is pretty safe though. Let's go with this one today. So 10 is halfway here, so 3. A dark blue will probably work. These also read very Selwyn to me anyways. Now you guys might have to do a bit of testing, but from what I've used in the past, both on this sketchbook paper and on the Bristol vellum that I like to use. Actually, let me grab sample really quick. Also, I'm listening to Pokopia music because I'm back into playing that game. But we have Sampo here that I did for the last alcohol marker video you guys saw last week. So basically what I found is that a lot of my water-based markers don't react with alcohol markers. So you might have to do a little bit of testing prior. You can see that like in areas of the skin, there was no like bleeding at all. So I did a lot of these. How well can you guys see this? My orange lines here, I did first. And then the darker lines I had after I finished coloring. But while I was doing like these lighter orange lines, I didn't see any bleeding. So I feel fairly confident with my supplies that so far I haven't had these markers bleed with any of my alcohol markers. And I've tested a few other like water-based ones, and so far they haven't reacted. So if that's like something you want to test out, feel free to do so, but don't like quote me on it if they actually do or they don't actually smudge with alcohol markers. Just, you know, do your own testing. So we are going to be doing line work for this. I might just get rid of that for now until we finish doing the line art. I also might zoom in for you guys. So this is the brush tip side. This is the fine liner side. It does have more of like that felt tip. Is that a felt tip? I can't really tell. Maybe it's not felt. Maybe it's like more of a plastic. But the way how I hold my pens, usually this little sharp edge, I don't know how to explain it. It digs into my finger so badly. So I like when the pens don't have like a busted nib because it makes it a lot easier for me to work with, which is also just my fault in general, so we'll see how this goes. We're just gonna get started. Hopefully you guys have an okay view. The camera's literally like right in front of my vision, so hopefully I can see where I'm adding my lines. Also, I apologize for not streaming much. I know I said I was gonna treat like July, more specifically for Art Fight, to be streaming a lot more. For some reason, I feel like my anxiety has gotten the better of me recently. So I think 3 days in a row, I was technically free to do streaming, but I psyched myself out 3 times, including today. We'll see. I probably will try to stream tomorrow. I have like 3 ongoing Art Fight attacks that I purposely kind of like somewhat saved for a stream day so that we can just focus on rendering, and then, you know, I don't have to put too much effort into doing a back and forth. I can just focus on rendering and just chatting in general. But because these are water-based, the more you go over an area, it does get like darker and darker. I do have to be a little bit more careful with areas. If I continuously go back and forth, I'm going to be ripping up the page a bit and the pilling might happen because this paper is technically not meant for any like water mediums. So I don't mind being like super detailed with the line art at this point. I can, or I like, you know, I kind of can go either way at this point. I highly recommend that if you know like the color combinations you're going to be using, then that way you can kind of figure out whether or not you think the orange is going to impede with what you're using. I'm only saying that because like I wouldn't really add like the pupil and the highlight in this manner if I didn't know that Selwyn has like typically a darker part of his iris at the very top, and then the rest of his eye is much more lighter as we reach the bottom of the iris. But I also try to plan out where I want to add some of my line weight like right away. Also, I might want to lighten my sketch a bit. I needed eraser. Let's lighten up my sketch because I need to be able to see where I'm actually adding in this. The orange lines, I guess. This also just helps like create some depth. So because my sketch is kind of on the messy side, there are some areas that I can't really tell if they're supposed to be the lines I wanted to keep or not. Oh well, if they become too much like of a problem, like I said, once we start doing like the darker lines, which I think I'm going to be using the darker blue. Also, I'm not gonna lie, when I was doing the alcohol marker video for Sampo, I didn't know who I wanted to draw, and I didn't really want to like spoil myself entirely of curating the markers, like the Artex ones specifically to Sampo. So I took like a quick glance at like the back of the box, and I could see that it had like a fair amount of like dark blues. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll just draw Sampo like with the alcohol markers. And even today, I was like, do I just draw Dan Heng again? Because I didn't really like how I drew him for that video. But then I kept flip-flopping. I procrastinated like doing this session, I think also 2 or 3 days. Probably the similar days that I didn't end up streaming because I told myself, oh, if I don't stream, I should record. And then I ended up just doing art fight related things. Just off camera completely. But I think that's like kind of where Sullen saves the day for me. Because like I said, Sullen's supposed to be like the character that is supposed to embody a lot of the things that I really like in both like character, personality, visually, etc. So hopefully it makes it very easy for me to want to draw him. And I think it's nice to have OCs that you can kind of fall back on. Because a part of me thinks like, if I draw fan art of the same character over and over again, you guys are gonna get sick of it. I know a lot of you guys are like, you don't mind. I do draw Dan Heng like a hell of a lot. I probably will do another like Dan Heng drawing session eventually. Because I would love to do another like larger alcohol marker piece, but make it Dan Heng. Maybe I'll do it like as a stream instead. So I'm glad a lot of you guys actually liked the one that I did of Sampo. Because I was so nervous in terms of like coloring him because the piece is so big. And other than like my uni days, I usually don't go any bigger than probably like an A4 sheet of paper. And this is like almost double the size because he's huge. He's humongous. At least to me he is. I think it could be fun to do like a really large piece. Maybe start to finish on a stream. I think I'm slowly wanting art fight to be over. I don't get art blocked or like, what is it called? Burnout as much, I feel like, for drawing specifically. But because of the added pressure, for some reason this year, it just felt worse. Because usually I'm pretty okay of being like, oh, this is drawing for fun versus like this is drawing for work, I guess. So I can't tell if I am like somewhat burnt out from drawing for art fight. I feel like I turned these into more like peonies. Now, I don't know if I talked about it in the first intro I tried recording or if it was in this one. I wanted to draw more like Himalayan poppies. It might be Iceland poppies that I'm thinking about now that I'm remembering. But they're really vibrant, kind of like translucent petals are so pretty. I typically draw like the blue Himalayan poppies because I find the color so pretty. But for this, because of Selwyn's color palette, I feel like I want more of that orange and that warmth coming through. Hence why I also wanted to choose a fine liner color that kind of fits that color combination. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I haven't drawn flowers as much as I want to as of recently. So I'm like sneaking them in here and there. Kind of like what I ended up doing for For Sampo, did I even explain these? I don't remember if I did. They're supposed to be based off of snapdragons, even though I feel like they don't really get into this blue territory. They're a little bit more like peachy, orangey, yellow color. Sometimes they can get into like the pink, but I drew them because I believe it means like lying and deceit. And I feel like Sampo's a little shady, which is why I wanted to include him into that. Maybe I should leave these more blank and then do more of like a gradation with the yellow and then go back in with acrylic marker. I don't remember exactly where I left off. That's crazy. I want to take like a break from this because, you know, if there's too much noise and I don't have peas, I have to take a break until things settle down. So I decided to play a little bit of Pokopia because I knew it wasn't going to be like too long of a break, so I didn't want to go into like a drawing session fully. I'm drawing these poppies like so poorly, by the way. But I'm finally back to collecting all the Pokemon again because I took a bit of a break so that I could focus on just building parts of my town. I feel like I kind of did the thing where it's like I didn't collect every Pokemon, so I didn't max out everywhere, but then I also didn't fully finish decking out my town, so it feels like I have zero progress, but I've racked up so many hours. I spent so much time in like my palette town instead of like other areas, so other areas are just like not developed. I finally got like both Rocky Ridges and Bleak Beach to maximum 10. They've been stuck at like 9 forever. And then I think I got Skylands from 7 to 9 now. Because I needed some of the recipes or like items you can get from the shop when you hit a certain environmental level. So I really needed both of them, not both of them, all 3 of them to be at like a certain level. Because I wanted Metagross. I love Metagross. He's like a, what is it? A gaming setup for his habitat. I'm like, why? I was missing the chair. I knew I had it somewhere, but I didn't want to dig around everywhere to look for it. But because I was actually like, you know, prioritizing leveling up environments, I've been trying to get more habitats and stuff done too. Because I use white paint so much, but it requires you to use like the little, I don't know what they're called. Poke points, poke mileage, whatever you want to call it. And I've ran out of it, so I wanted to complete as much as I can. Now I'm back to like 18k. So now I can buy all the white paint I want. But the Pokemon that I got recently, so I got Metagross, I got Magnezone, I got Pelipper. So because this is in my sketchbook also, sometimes I feel a little less compelled to make these more finished, I guess, compared to like how I did the one of Sampo. Because some of my lines are a little bit more like simplified. Because even for Sampo, when I was doing the Snapdragons, I kind of just winged it and did them. Luckily, they came out kind of like airy looking. They're not like super accurate, but they're kind of more like, you know, they have little bits of shapes and shadow, and then the line art kind of like really completed it. So it might be the same thing for this, but I do want these to be a little bit more transparent-ish looking. We'll see. Okay, so let me zoom out and we can get started with doing some alcohol marker. So I think we're not gonna zoom out like too far so that I can show you guys kind of like a little bit closer when I start to do layering and blending. So oftentimes I'll use this extra kind of like sketchbook as a scratching pad if I need to plan out colors. Like this one looks kind of like the Ike one that I did a while back. But also I have my, let's see, these are my Copic ones. So I feel like skin tone colors, especially the lighter, more fairer tone skin color, I use those markers quite a bit. So I might use these as my base. Another reason is because I know I will be able to get refills for these at some point. And even though like I don't use like a full set of the Copic ones super often, I will use these ones in conjunctions with either maybe Artex or Ohuhu markers. And I know for those ones, typically I run out of the skin tone type of markers super quickly. For the most part, whenever I worked with like Copic markers, because I have like such a small amount of them, if I know I have colors I like or I want to use more often, I will more or less try to opt for the Copic ones because I know they have refills for every single one of their Copic sketch markers, I believe. So it's a little bit easier for me to have like a reliable stash if I need them. But because these are more pricier, if you want like a plethora amount of colors, I recommend going for like cheaper sets that are a little bit more affordable. So going for Artex or Ohuhu, where you can buy like large sets for a better price. But not all of those colors will have refills. So, you know, you kind of, you know, when you're done with that marker, it's kind of done. So I'm just gonna use these as the base colors, and we'll pick some more colors that are a little bit more either peachy, pink, and then we'll gradually move to like purple. And because Selwyn's hair color is leaning more towards blue, and I like using like blues to kind of contrast with a lot of the warm areas I have for the skin tone, so we'll probably lean towards that, which like I said, I like using Ohuhu typically. Okay, I need to match these colors for Selwyn's eyes. I'm just gonna pull up a reference. I don't like, the whole point of Selwyn is the fact that he's supposed to be easy for me to draw, but sometimes I'm a little bit too anal about like matching colors. These are a lot of my yellows and oranges here, which looks kind of crazy because the color comp for Selwyn is basically all of this. Looks kind of crazy. I didn't choose the colors for his sweater, which we'll decide a little bit later. This might seem crazy, but a lot of these are also transition colors or colors that I think I might use. So we're gonna start off with a skin tone, and I forgot I left all. These are also what I use for like skin tone. They're more on the pastel side. If we want something darker, I'll layer up some other colors, but these plus these is kind of like our base for our skin tone. For our majority of our skin, this is to warm things up, and these are for our shadows. So for skin, I don't like to use the lightest skin tone right away. I can help it, especially if you want things to look a little bit more smooth. I will usually start off with kind of our second color. So a color that you use to plan out your shadows. So that way we can use our lighter color to kind of blend out everything. I bleed this into the hair as well. I know this isn't going to be the best example because you guys aren't going to be able to see it too great, but this color, or not this color, this alcohol marker is not smudging with my line art. And like I said, you're probably not going to be able to tell the difference because my line art is also orange. So even if there was any bleeding, you guys won't be able to see it super clearly. So depending on how you like to work, I feel like it's always best to work quickly with alcohol markers to get the blending to be as smooth as possible if you want to have the colors basically both still somewhat wet, and then that way they'll be able to mix a little bit more smoothly and more even. But I think I'm also just not like as picky about like how blended things might be. I don't know if we want to make his face more flushed. Eh? What is this? Oh, this sucks. So you know I said some lead can mix with the skin? You guys can't really see it. Maybe I'll take a photo. There's like blue on his face now. Why? Why? I know why. In my pencil, like here in the barrel or like near the tip, I can see like broken blue lead shards. Man. Some of your pigments. So a lot of my pink and like red lines already disappeared with the alcohol because it kind of dissolves. Why is it on the tip of this? Nightmare. There's no way it's on this, right? There's no reason for this marker to have any... Let's see. This is why you need a scratch pad too. I should have been testing these. Nothing. What the heck? Nothing. Don't tell me the back of this sticker paper had a lot of pigment on it. Mystery blue pigment. Well, I know what it is, but why is it appearing now? I'm wondering if there was like color underneath, which is like what I'm usually wary about. So you guys aren't seeing how pink this is. It probably just looks very peachy to you. Also, different marker brands have different firmnesses. I find Ohuhu and Artex have much more stiff feeling alcohol markers for their tips, for like their brush tips, but I like it because you can get a nice sharp edge, while Copic markers have a really flexible nib, which is great for like blending and more like softer coloring. You can get like smaller sharp areas as well alongside with the Copic ones too, but I do like how firm typically these brush tips are. But sometimes when things are too soft, they look a little bit off anyways. It's really worst case scenario, because like any other place, I wouldn't really mind as much, but like when it's on the face so close to either like the mouth and the eyes, it bums me so much because it's so noticeable. Like you see how much this flexes? Like it really squishes down. But because of that, you can do like really nice flicking motions and you can really fade things out so that it becomes super soft, and I feel like that helps the most when it comes to blending. But the firmer nibs aren't bad either. I feel like the last person I drew with like alcohol markers out of my OCs was probably Moriko, I feel like. I'm gonna try to flick more of this color in the hair. So I can soften a lot of these areas. I might even add it a little bit into his clothing, because with how flexible this nib is, it just works really nice to almost like feels more of like a watercolor effect almost because of how light it is, but then it fades out really nicely, so it's very soft. Sometimes I like to lay down our purple, which we'll use mauve. This purple is much more like more vibrant, very warm compared to the shadows I like to use. Overlaying like on some of these more pink peachy areas, it also reads a little bit warmer. We add blue. See, you can see I wasn't really doing any blending, but like the flicking motion and then having the colors being in a very similar range, I don't really have to do a lot of actual physical blending, I guess. But this is where we might have to do blending. So if I take my blue, which might look a little crazy, you can use a different color to help blend this out. And hopefully the shadows will look a little bit too intense at this point, but one thing is usually a little bit deceiving is the fact that everywhere else right now has like, you know, it's covered in white, right? Because of that, the skin at this point is the darkest point of our illustration. So sometimes I get fooled by this and I get very timid about adding deeper shadows into the skin tone. They might turn out really, really pale, which means that I will have to go back in and correct and darken things later. Because once you add in like someone's hair color and some other context, I guess, to the illustration, then these areas will no longer look as intimidatingly dark. Some blue here. But when it was like still very wet, I didn't have to really do any blending. It kind of just like melts together. Yeah, for you guys, you're not gonna be able to see how bright purpley pink this looks. Probably looks very normal, but it's a little bit too intense for the shadow that I wanted. Oh, now you guys can kind of see the blue that I was talking about. Feels like it's a little crazy looking now. This one you guys can't really see super closely. The blue, so I think I used sky blue to brilliant blue. So I don't know how well you guys can see this. Because you guys are at a steep angle, or not a, you're at a low angle. So I can't prop these up, but I think this is the gradation I'm gonna use. Near the bottom. I'm not not gonna go too high because I don't want the orange and the blue to blend too much because there is a degree of separation for color. I might even choose a lighter yellow for this. Blue here, because I don't know how I want to transition this per se. I'm gonna bring this pretty close to the top. Because the thing is, it's like, alcohol markers are also very good with like layering. As you can see when I was layering up some of these purple and blues into the skin tone. And because of that, I don't want some of these colors to be too muddy by not leaving some of the areas like white, so I can have just pure color. So I don't know if you guys can tell what I mean, but like this is the muddy color where the orange and the blue is reacting. It's like adding a little bit of a reflective color at the very top just to make the eyes look extra shiny. Also, can you guys see this texture? Sometimes you might see this and it means like the colors might have had a hard time like blending with each other because like a lot of it's like almost blooming. But on this particular like notebook paper, this is just what it looks like when I oversaturate the paper typically with alcohol anyways, so this is kind of normal. I'm using the very tip of my marker here because I don't want to go and cover up the highlight or the orange that I wanted to be laid down. And I think the muddiness is kind of working in my favor for creating like a darker color up here. I feel like Selwyn has a little bit more of that pink color in his eyes as well. Maybe a pinky purple. This is why sometimes I just wing it. It's probably not the best to do this all the time because if you layer up too much color, you're not using any other medium, you kind of can't go back unless you want to use the colorless blender to help push some of that color around. That's kind of like Selwyn's overall eye color, I think. Other than the pupil. Once again, my camera's kind of struggling. I feel like when I was doing like the acrylic marker drawings, my camera wasn't struggling this badly, was it? And because of these water-based markers, I like to use the alcohol markers right on top of it. It's kind of like how I work digitally. So I just like cover up my line work and we can just use the very tip of our alcohol marker for this. And I'm leaving the center a little bit more bare, so we can use a lighter color instead. So I usually like adding a little bit more of like a highlight or a lighter color to make the lashes look a little bit more shiny at the very top. I could have used something a little bit lighter, but like I said, once until like we actually start to add our line work back in, these colors will also like go back a little bit more. Once again, I'm not checking what color I use. I think this is like a completely different blue. What do I want to say? Shadows, lighting, the color transitions I want. We're gonna have to kind of plan this accordingly to the best as we can. So it's like part of a base. I don't want to go too crazy with this because layering up some of the blues is gonna make his hair look more green. So I do have to be very intentional with this. I'm only gonna add in some places because I want to add both green and probably blue. Which is what I was saying, I should actually plan this out accordingly instead of just placing colors. We can use this to kind of plan out where we want some of our highlights. Focus mostly on the crown of his head for the highlights. I think this blue is actually fine. Okay, I'm gonna focus basically on this section so we can kind of just test things out. So what I like to do is pick like your dark mid-tone colors. So I'm gonna have to look this up really quick. His hair isn't quite this purple, is it? So we're gonna use these first, I think. And what I like to do for hair, I think this is why I think it would be fun to do this for a live stream as well, is the fact that I would be able to show you guys in real time as well. But you can kind of see this is like his main hair color. But I would also want to slowly transition this. So we're gonna choose another color, which is kind of like I said, similar-ish in value. So it's not gonna be like so shocking to this marker being transitioned per se. We can just find other colors to see what we can layer into it. We're leaning very purple. This hair reads very sunset, which I'm not upset about. I love bleeding. I love bleeding in the skin tone into the hair if I can. Even if it's like not the most effective here, it still more or less works. So I think this is okay for our base. So we're just gonna continue. Because for me, how I do highlights, I leave these pretty sharp. So luckily, I don't really have to blend between here. Otherwise, I feel like that would be a nightmare for me. Some of these areas I'm letting it overlap. Like I said, not everything needs to be like super blended. As long as you get, you know, the shape or whatever you're looking for kind of like more correct. I feel like it's more effective than like making everything look smooth, you know? Especially for hair, like not everything needs to be smooth. But it depends on like your style and the type of hair. Someone's hair is a little bit more on the messy side, so I feel like I can get away with it a little bit more. And then I feel like for just like coloring in general, I kind of do a mix between flicking and kind of just like using just normal strokes, kind of like a circular motion, and then kind of like a back and forth motion. It just depends on like what I'm trying to blend. I might just try to get rid of all the white and pick another color to help blend this all out. Because you can kind of see like the strokes, right? But because the colors are so close in value, it doesn't bother me as much. And we're gonna have to darken these areas anyways, so I'm not really too bothered by it. It's definitely picking up the blue still on the marker. We can go back in, which is kind of like a reason why I also use the not the most darkest color immediately. Because like I said, this is more like his base color for his hair. But also because of the sticker paper underneath, I have to be careful of how I'm pooling in the alcohol marker because it's drying very slowly in some areas, which sometimes is a benefit. Other times it is kind of like tinting some of my markers to have like a darker color because it's being picked up. Just stuff to be wary about if that's going to be something that bothers you or might come to more like be unexpected, I guess. Also, alcohol markers like dry differently, right? Compared to when you first lay them down. I feel like for like shiny hair, typically, I don't only need to blend certain areas to get like a nice hair texture typically. You can also go back in with like acrylic marker, white gel pen, etc. to do highlights. Pigment, I guess. You're working light to dark, so you should really plan out your highlights as much as you can if you don't plan on using like any other mediums to kind of help create some of that highlight or lightness for you. He's looking cute. Like I said, for hair, some areas I just don't like when they're overly blended. So I'm gonna put back in some, you know, strands and sections so that they have a little bit more form. Oops. Okay, so one more darker color. We have clematis. We have Napoleon blue or Prussian blue. Just to push this even darker. Like I said, like we could use a black fine liner probably to pull some of these colors back out. Not colors, like some of these sections back out if we really needed to. Or I can be very careful with the next dark color that I choose. Which I think Prussian blue is the one we're going to go with. I feel like this is working though, for at least what I need it to do for the most part. Because like I said, I don't really have a plan for the flowers per se. I should probably find another orange though, because this is kind of like getting into the territory where it might be a little bit harder for me to blend out if it wasn't for the fact that these have a lot of ink in them. But also giving them more intentional texture can just help give the illusion. It's also very easy. Like I said, I feel like I picked a color that struggles to blend this out fully, so it's gonna require a little bit more elbow grease. I feel like there's another color I could use instead of the colorless blender for this. Because I don't use the colorless blender all that much. Because it can only blend out so much, you know. So I don't even know if this is really even helping. Unless I go over the area first. And try to lay down our yellow. Okay, let's add our shadow to his dress shirt. Or collared shirt, whatever you want to call it. Ah, got a little bit of blue. I apologize if the rolling sound of the markers is like very loud. There's like no other way of explaining it. But I feel like colored pencils was also very loud. I think you guys were fine with it. I don't know what you call this. I was gonna call it a bolo tie, but technically it's not. I feel like it's just 2 ribbons. Or not 2 ribbons, 1 ribbon. Folded over each other kind of thing. It's just like overlapped each other. Because they're not really tied per se. Not me looking at this red being like, hey, I could probably put it with the flowers. I need to stop. The flowers need no more red. Well, not the worst. This one's not too bad. It does read more muddy, similar to here. At least it'll push the contrast like just a smidge. Another thing you have to worry about when using alcohol markers, and depending on your paper type, is that there could be feathering. So the edges kind of like, you know, disperse out a little bit more, and it might get a little fuzzy. Right, so after that is this kind of, 1 second, I'm missing some line art here. I think it's because I knew it was gonna be a sketch, so I don't really wanna, I didn't really care. B64 is it B64? B64. What the heck? Oh, B64. So I guess this would be darker than this one, so this is one of our shadow colors. These could be debatable whether or not that's darker or not. I might have to go take Napoleon blue might be better of a choice if I need to go darker from Indian blue. So PB4. I like to start just with the normal base color. If there is a highlight, then we can leave a highlight. I didn't really think about that. Ah, okay. Because once we have the shadows and stuff, I can mostly just like follow the direction of adding in our folds. You can see, like, despite using only 1 color, you can still get some color variation. So being a little bit of aware, like a little bit aware of how you're placing down your colors is gonna matter to a certain degree. Which is why it's like, I feel like that's the reason why filling in larger areas becomes a lot more tricky. It's because you're kind of, you know, scared of not making things look very cohesive and flat or one solid form. Because this area looks like one solid form because it's very easy to fill in something very straight and narrow and smaller, obviously. But back and forth is basically similar to circular motions to a certain degree. Because I'm basically doing like larger ovals, if anything. I think this, like, me going back and forth is because, like, if you're working in smaller areas, it's more easier for me to control. Like I said, I'm not like too worried about making things look very like blended at this point. I feel like his sweater color, like his cardigan color, is probably the worst color I probably have chosen for myself in terms of traditional medium other than like watercolor, because it's either too brown or too skin tony. Let me see, I'm gonna pull up a photo again. Because granted, it's not that different. It's more yellowy, sandy color. Soft Sun's actually pretty close, maybe. Is it too close to his skin tone? A little bit. It's actually not too bad though. Color doesn't exist. 180, 270, 171. Ah, okay. Okay, I found it. Because those are kind of like my go-to when it comes to adding some extra shading and color typically. So we're gonna use Soft Sun for our base. Now I don't think I've used this color that much, so hopefully this is still a very juicy marker. Also, sometimes I use the chisel tip. This is like seldomly, but I'll use this to block in a color. I feel like it makes it very easy to get like a very even look. Because you guys can let me know, I think I talked about this in the Artex video. What do you guys prefer to use? Bullet nib or chisel tip? Because I think because I've worked on like larger pieces in the past that required me to fill in like super big areas, I found it easier to blend sometimes with 2 chisel tips because I wanted to cover like a larger area while also blending. But I think the one that I did of like Ike, I'll probably show you guys at the very end, maybe some of my other alcohol marker drawings. If you saw the one that I did of Sampo, I briefly showed some of my old alcohol marker drawings. And those ones were done on the Bristol board, which I love a lot. I feel like if I were to do one of like Dan Heng again and we go like do a live stream of me working on it, I will definitely do it with that Bristol board vellum because it's my favorite in terms of like blending and like color vibrancy. You don't really see as much of like the speckliness. Yeah, because this is much more yellowy. While this one, which is sand, is a little bit more muted. I feel like for some browns, tans, yellows, using like muted purples is like a good way of adding more like subtle shadows. Probably doesn't read as nice as I would like it to be, but kind of helps darken up the shadows in like a way that adds a little bit of color, but hopefully it's not too yellowy. So for Selwyn, I like doing the horizontals, which I think it depends on the fabric, on which way it's facing, but the horizontals I like adding as like a double stripe. I'm usually not very good at doing patterning in line with the fabric, but you know, it's okay. We'll figure it out. There's probably many areas for me to use this, but you know, it's okay. So I'm gonna change some of these stars to be more of an orange. Just make them look a little less flat. And then we have a bunch of different like kind of pastel-y colors, which typically are my favorite colors to use for alcohol markers for doodling. I should have done this instead. I don't know what this fluorescent color looks like. I don't know how a fluorescent alcohol marker would really work. I don't think it looks too bad. It's fine. I feel like there's definitely other areas I could have pushed some of our shadows or some of our other colors more if we wanted to. Okay, so I'll show you guys an overview of what it looks like right now. And in the meantime, I'm gonna clean up my desk. Let me see if I can show you guys the state of my desk right now. All of these. I have a handful of markers on this side too. So this is kind of the assortment of colors, which all of these were not super necessary because some of them were colors that I was experimenting with to see whether or not they would work. And some of them were definitely not needed. But I think it's fine. We got to a result. So it's okay. And it's fun to just mess around in your sketchbook. So I'll show you guys the overview and then we can do kind of like maybe our last step of this process. Okay, so this is kind of what Selwyn looks like right now. So this is just with the alcohol markers plus the orange fine liner that we use to do our line work. Now you can see that pretty much all of my red lines disappeared, minus like in areas that were like much lighter. But we're gonna also take off this. I'm gonna show you guys the bleed through, which I always like to joke that it's almost like a 1-to-1 because a lot of the darker colors and everything kind of just seep into the paper right away and basically is just like almost an exact copy of the front side minus some areas. And this is what I mean by this paper is like super thin. I feel like sample, you know, the bleed through, it's kind of different. It's like splotchy and like only areas that I had like really heavy blending or saturated the ink a lot just to get either like blending or really wanting to make the area super dark by layering. Really soaked into the page and made it to the back side. But for the most part, I don't think it actually like bled through. Like it didn't reach my desk. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm probably going to zoom in once more, but instead of using orange, we're gonna try to see how well this blue is gonna show up. It's not as dark as the ones that I used like in the past, but those ones I know the nib is like unfortunately flattened because of my heavy-handedness. And like I said, the way how I hold fine liners, it really digs into my skin because this is like right at the point of where I rest pens and pencils typically. So if it can glide with ease, it would be a lot easier on my hand. I feel like every time I zoom in super close, this is like really in my face. So I apologize if I go a little bit off camera because it might be me trying to dodge my floating camera arm. But typically, I start with the eyes, but I did quite a bit of the darker line work already with the alcohol markers. But you can see that this color is still pretty dark on top of the orange. So it's actually working in my favor. And because it is a water-based marker, sometimes the more times I go over an area, the darker that it gets. So I can kind of pick and choose how dark I want them to be. And I like choosing a lot of these like corners. Because like I said, when we were doing line work with the orange ink initially, I liked already planning places that I feel like would have more depth. And sorry, I'm gonna be like whipping my sketchbook around because the natural curvature of my hand and my arm, it's like inwards rather than outwards. So if I have a curve, I will almost always want the curve to follow the same way as my hand flicks inwards. I don't know. I watched like a Jet Pens video like a long time ago. I mentioned this in the other video I think as well, where they kind of talk about like one of the staff members like weird grip. I was always told that I have a weird grip in terms of like how I hold my pencil, but I've seen many people hold it like this, and sometimes I tuck the thumb in as well. I believe like the normal way how people like want to correct people who hold their pens, it's like this, right? One finger on the top, your thumb here, and it's to write like this. I believe. To me, this is so uncomfortable because I don't have enough control. So I double up on, you know, having this hold the pen, and then I don't know what my thumb does. It just kind of is here. Because sometimes I go like this. Sometimes it's like this. Sometimes it's like this. Because I feel like my grip looks crazy every time I tuck in my thumb. I think it's because it looks like a fist from certain angles. So it kind of looks like... I had a friend who had like a really strange grip, like back in high school. I watched her paint a beautiful painting, by the way. But I saw her grip and I'm like, I don't know if she holds it like this. I don't know. I saw her like her holding her paintbrush and it looks so strange. I think it's like this. I'm like, how does that work? Oh, I should have took a picture of what the before looked like. It's fine. You guys saw it. Just like I said, I feel like this makes the biggest difference. Especially at least for me when I work on my art, because I typically like a softer look, but I also love the contrast of like line work if I can, but I hate doing line work. So, you know, having a process where I get to do it at the very end and I kind of get to pick and choose what I want to emphasize helps a lot. Because some of these lighter areas we don't have to darken. I like to focus like on areas that need more contrast because of shadows, or if I want it to stand out. Not everywhere needs it. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the point of having the orange, I would say. Because if I knew I was going to outline everything in this dark blue, then I might as well skip the orange step and go straight in with the blue. Because otherwise, the orange is very redundant. Like, it just feels like a very unnecessary step. But I like having the orange stand out. Just in, you know, certain areas. I don't need it everywhere as well. Or like, because it is too light, some of our parts or areas get a little bit lost. Because even that already helps quite a bit. Because Selwyn's hair kind of got a little bit of its form hidden by all the ink. And I feel like it resembles more of my digital art this way too. It's more noticeable, I think, with the alcohol marker process. And I feel like, I don't know if it is because of my light pressure sometimes, or if it's because these lines can actually get like super thin, but I choose to thicken them. You can get super thin lines, which I always find very helpful. If you're someone like me who likes some of the details being very, or not the details, I guess like I like the lines being thin and then being able to choose to make them thicker. That's usually my gripe when it came to working with the acrylic paint markers, because a lot of them, you're kind of set on a very typically thicker thickness. But for lines, I love when it can get this thin. Like I said, it's not necessary everywhere. You could have also like used maybe like even a pink might have worked nicely if you want it to blend a little bit more seamlessly, but there is a reason why I used orange, besides the fact that it is present in a lot of the places of Selwyn's outfit and just like the colors and stuff that I chose. They kind of create almost like a dark browny, muddier, darker color, which I prefer when doing line work, because it kind of makes sure that things do appear fairly dark despite the orange being fairly light. Like with the overlap, it's very different versus like if you leave it fairly separated, I guess. Does that make sense? Bigger scratch pad here. I'm gonna lay orange first because it's the lighter color. I could keep going like over and over and over again if I wanted to get it darker, but obviously, like I said, it'll kind of like pill the page. But this becomes a lot darker than its original color. So it makes it a lot easier for me to almost like reach, not exactly black per se, but it does become a little bit more neutral, right? In this case, it's leaning a little bit more like browny green. But that's kind of what happens when you're neutralizing each other with their complementary colors in a way. Because I've talked about this, I was definitely like the weakest painter. So like my knowledge of color mixing too was very basic, like super, super basic. Like crazily basic. But then hearing about like other people saying that they didn't want to go through all the hassle, and I'm like, thank the Lord. It's not just me just hating painting. But for them, it was probably because it was tedious. For me, it was probably skill issue. But I'm glad I did that exercise because I understand it. Like, I understood it in theory, you know? And that color wheel, I feel like, was very helpful. In terms of the exercise, I don't think I ever really, like, referred to it, per se. As you can see, I kind of just wing it. Once again, I feel like the lines are going to help the flowers a fair amount. If you want like more realistic looking flowers, then don't add these outlines like this. Because things in real life don't have outlines. And that goes for like anything. Because if I do certain areas with the same exact line width all the way around, it's definitely going to read more flat versus like if you do choose to, you know, darken up some areas to create depth, thicken up some lines if it's like closer to the person, etc. If it's further away, use thinner lines, lighter lines. Because also me just like not outlining everything and skipping some areas already helps as well. And less kind of like just winging it. So as I'm recording, I think I have just under a week. And I have three ongoing, and there's like 2 other people I want to draw, and I'm like, I have to finish a drawing every day at this point for me to finish. Granted, I could probably finish 3 drawings in the same day because they're all more or less in the rendering phase. Other than, yeah, we're gonna pull out the gel pens. I think I do want to add a little bit of those translucent, maybe stars or something, just for fun. If not, just like white embellishment. I don't know if there's any way for me to correct this. It does bother me. And the fact that you guys don't see it as prominent is crazy. So, as usual, we're using the Languo acrylic painting gel pens. I'm gonna look for our fluorescent colors. Because they have like a fluorescent yellow. I'm kind of looking in here. It's one of these yellow. I'm pretty sure these ones are like the fluorescent ones. So I think it's probably this yellow that I'm looking for. I need a scrap paper. So the thing about like acrylic gel pens and all that, sometimes they skip a little bit more. So if you don't use them for a while, you might have to reactivate them. Because my problem typically is that sometimes it becomes more streaky. I'm gonna show you guys a bit of a close-up so you can kind of see what it looks like. because sometimes when I do it from far away, it looks smoother than it actually is. You can kind of see like the texture of like where I add certain colors and stuff. Or how translucent sometimes the white actually is. Or how messy my lines are. Because otherwise, like when I zoom out, it looks pretty clean, I guess. So I think this is what the finished illustration is gonna look like. I like this one a lot more than I did for Dan Heng, but I think I talked about the kind of the reasoning. And it's not exactly about like the markers itself. I did have problems transitioning some of the colors because there were some of those almost mid-tone to light color transition was a little bit hard for me to have for this. So some of the contrast might look a little bit more washed out. For Selwyn, I could get more transitions even between like the shadows and then like the fleshed area of his face. And then even some of these other areas, they were just easier for me to, you know, have a segue in, which is like why I recommend if you can, if you find that there's colors that you're missing, see if there's like any supplementary sets that you can tag alongside with it and look kind of like across different brands. Because like I mentioned, alcohol markers for the most part, like I've always used them kind of interchangeably regardless of the brand, and they usually seem like they work seamlessly. So that's also another option. Because like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about using the, what is it called? The Copic marker versions, they're really expensive. If you need like a larger amount of colors, it's going to be very pricey. But the upside is the fact that they always have refills. For me, I always find that it's easier for me to have like a bigger set if I'm using them, not like, so for me, like my main set I would consider is either between one of the Artex ones and the Ohuhu ones. I think the Ohuhu one is the one that I'm most comfortable using. Kind of like pick and choose different colors that I like from, like, I even carry these ones like in my pencil case often because these are like two of my favorite colors together. But if I'm missing or running low on a color, I'll like look to other sets to use in conjunction. And for Copics, I do plan on probably buying a refill for like each of the skin tones because I use this combination quite a bit. And then usually for the purples and pinks, they don't, you know, run out as quickly because I'm not filling in super large areas typically. But yeah, alcohol markers, always very pleasant to work with for the most part. Sometimes I do struggle. I think we got to a good place with Selwyn's hair in the end, despite some of the patchiness. And I feel like it's actually similar-ish colors to the ones that I did for Sampo, you know? But let me go show you another illustration real quick. I feel like I have several alcohol marker drawings that I've shown in the past. But the one of Soneto I like showing just because I like the color combinations, and I feel like this one's the easiest to see where I used like orange versus like the dark, I'm assuming it's purple? Yes, I think it's the purple one that I used for her, where you can kind of see where the lines, I kind of pick and choose where I want to add them, and they really help bring everything together without, you know, using it in an overwhelming way. So the orange helps create the form and I can see all my lines, but then using the purples to help deepen some of these shadows so you can actually see them with a little bit more contrast. So this is definitely one of my favorites, Soneto. And then the other one I was talking about was that when I was blending the background, oh, this one has a lot of bleed through, or not bleed through, I guess ghosting technically, because I don't think this actually bled through all the way either. But I was mixing a heck of a lot, you can see in this area, because I wanted a transition of kind of like a purple to blue. And like I said, I feel like my camera makes it look more dramatic than it is, but I use mostly the chisel tip. Like certain areas you can kind of see like a band of where I was using it, but I found it a lot easier than burning through the brush tip, so that's why I kind of prefer the chisel tip for some things. But this is one of my favorites as well. One, because it was Ike, but also challenged myself to do kind of this lighting, which I was not confident with, which I recommend doing like a color comp, right? Because I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do the transition for you know, the colors of the skin where I wanted the candlelight to be, and then the rest of his skin tone to read more in the shadow. So, but it also helped because I did a digital comp first, which helped me plan these colors and then this. And then, yeah, I think, at least as of recently, I've always loved this one now. I think it's just so fun with the vibrant colors, because did I mention why I drew Sampo? Besides, like, I saw the colors, is the fact that usually he gets recommended to me, because I always ask, like, what's like a person or a character that has more of like a blue and red combination, or kind of like the blue to purpley pinky color combination, and I usually get suggested Sampo because like this hair color alongside with this color, which kind of gets interchangeably more towards like more of a wine red, more pinky red-ish kind of color. So, you know, it was kind of in due time that I would draw him eventually. But as usual, I always love this color combination as well. I wish I used a little bit more of this teal color somewhere in the whole entire drawing, like maybe in the background or something, but I feel like maybe it'll look too overwhelming. But I think Selwyn actually looks pretty good. Bleed through, like I said, and luckily on this side, nothing, because of that adhesive backing on the sticker paper kind of prevents the ink from flowing through, luckily. But you can kind of see the difference. So Dan Heng versus, you know, taking my time, building up everything, but also having those transition colors. I seriously recommend playing around with like how you transition colors if you want more seamless, smooth blending, and then having that color pay off really nice. Because I feel disappointed about this, and I want to redo a drawing or something with Dan Heng again. So you guys have to yell at me in the comments and tell me, probably in August? Remind me in August for me to do a live stream where I will do real-time, like live version of me working with alcohol markers. Then I will stick to Dan Heng, because maybe I shouldn't go too far out of my comfort zone with that one, so that I can properly show you guys how to blend and stuff as well. So yeah, we'll see. Just remind me, probably in August, because I'm gonna still try my best to stream with the remainder of the days that I can in July for Art Fight. And then once we're in August, I will kind of vary it up with what I live stream. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's little drawing session and learned a little bit more maybe about alcohol markers. Maybe if you guys have questions about alcohol markers, do let me know. I'm not the most proficient, but I usually am pleased with the end result typically. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video though. Bye!